Hey folks, welcome back. Time for some more extended Halloween action. This time we're looking at the brand new release from our friends at Two Little Mice, based in Italy. This is Memento Mori, the Deathless Edition. So this was kickstarted about a year ago, I want to say. And as usual, Two Little Mice delivered on time, and they delivered a beautiful product. And extra shout out to them for helping me out. I had a little bit of damage to my copy in shipping, and they just replaced the whole thing. So thanks for that. Over and above the standard of customer service, so I really appreciate that. The fact that the company's run by just two people and one artist is still amazing to me. So Memento Mori, this game is all about corruption, basically. So you play as drifters, people who have been infected by the Black Plague during that dark period in Europe's history, and this version of that reality is even darker. So in Memento Mori, your sickness has awakened something within you, and you can actually gain dark powers as the disease and your powers themselves start to slowly corrupt every single aspect of you, up to and including your name and your identity itself, until eventually you're fully corrupted and give yourself over to a creature beyond the veil and become a supernatural, gruesome monstrosity yourself. So very cheerful overall. Typically, this game is expected to run between 5 and 7 sessions, so this is designed more for short campaigns. I think it'd be a really great narrative game to run through over short periods. This is just my first impression, so I haven't played this yet. Just want to bear that in mind. I always label videos where I haven't played the system yet as first impressions so that you know where I'm coming from. And this just arrived pretty recently. I had the damaged copy for a while, but I didn't touch it until I got the replacement. I wanted to show the game in its best possible condition, and here we are. So, without any further ado, let's take a look. So, the Deathless Edition is a bunch of books in this lovely setup here. On the flip side, you can see the lovely gold where it says MM, the logo of the game, Memento Mori, and the Deathless Edition logo on the bottom there. On the very bottom of the box, you can see the characteristic 2 of Two Little Mice, and the logo again on the top with a sort of sunburst around it. Now, what's cool about this is this front piece with this fantastic artwork, and again more gilding, is actually a GM screen which is magnetically attached to the books underneath, which are done in a lovely style, so they look kind of like medieval tomes, as you can see. And in the Kickstarter, you got 3 books and one thing that looks like a book, but we'll get to that later. Now, the flip side of the GM screen, you can see here, it covers the basics of combat, creating advantages, calling on the dream, how to roll dice, which basically involves picking different white and black slots on your character sheet, white for uncorrupted slots, black for corrupted ones, and you roll white and black dice in corresponding amounts. And then the third page is about corruption itself, which can include corrupting blood slots, corrupting an organ, corrupting your bonds to other people, corrupting your name, corrupting your virtues, and then you can have gifts as well. So they always require a roll, and you'll need to combine the number of dice you have for an organ and your blood, as well as the corrupted slots tied to the gift itself. Now, the gifts are interesting because you can create them narratively. One of the points noted about the quick start was that there was no examples of gifts as such. That is different in the full game. There is a list of sample gifts for each of the different marks, which are the kind of like character classes equivalent in this game. So inside the box itself, we have these 4 different pieces. And again, we've got this lovely box. The box is also designed here so that the GM screen can be attached whichever way you like. So if you want to have it attached but have the book showing outwards, you can attach the GM screen around the back, which is nice as well. So we have a lovely image of death standing atop a pile of skulls and various bones. Not all of them are human. One of them has a crown. And then on the flip side, something else horrific. Some sort of creature with arms on its head. Its head appears to be upside down. It's got a bit of a jester vibe going on. It's pierced through by something with a head dangling from it. And it's, whatever this is, weapon, scepter, something, is stabbing through something else. So just one example of one of the many wonders you can find beyond the veil in this game. But yeah, everything in this set is just beautifully atmospheric. And we have then our main contents of the game itself. So Memento Mori, as you might expect, is the core rulebook for the game. So we'll take a quick look at that in a moment. Codex Gigas is a kind of bestiary combined with herbarium, and it's got some artifacts and items in it as well. And then Ex Vellum, got a whole bunch of stuff in there which was part of the stretch goals for the backer kit. So there's tips on playing the game, there's additional sort of peeling back what's going on beyond the veil, some new creatures, all kinds of cool stuff in there. Then as an early backer, I got this extra art print, which is lovely. By lovely, I mean, of course, grotesque, but nice little bonus nonetheless. And then we have Arcafati, which looks like a book, sort of, but it's not. Inside we have various other bits of material for playing the game. First of all, we have our lovely embroidered dice bag here with the logo on the front, really nice quality. And then inside we have our black and white dice. I'll just take one of each here to show you. So they're standard D6s, except that the 6 is the logo MM. So that's the 6 on the white die, and on the black die, it's a lovely black and gold combination. Always looks good in my opinion. So we've got the usual pips, and then for 6 we have an MM. Nothing special for the 1, which is kind of a shame. I thought there was an opportunity there to put like a skull or something grim to represent the negative effects of that, but never mind. Then we have the tarot deck. Note that I've unsealed some of the stuff before this first impressions, just so I can get a quick look at some of the things. And I'll show you the tarot deck quickly while we're here, because it is stunningly beautiful. So on the flip side, we have the backs have this kind of cosmological vibe, all nice and gold and shiny. The cards themselves are of course beautifully illustrated. We've got the Fool, the Magician, the Priestess, the Empress, the Emperor, so incredibly shiny. We've got the Pope, that's a particularly good one, the rays of light, yet horribly disgusting creature underneath. We've got the Lovers. We've got the Chariot, which is a really creative illustration, incredibly grim, but very creative. We have Justice, another really good one. The Hermit, seems to be about to be devoured by zombies or something. The Wheel of Fortune looks horrible. Grim execution device. We have Strength. We have the Hanged Man. That's pretty cool as well. And we have Death, of course. Always an interesting card in tarot. We have Temperance. And we have the Devil. That's a good one. Chained here to some demons. And interesting symbols and symbology throughout. We have the Tower loomed over by this horrific visage, and the towers themselves are screaming. Yeah, nothing is particularly pleasant in the visuals of this game. We have the Star, even that, looks terrifying. The Moon, similarly terrifying. The Sun, which is just pure shininess. Look how awesome that is. And you can see it roasting alive, these poor bastards down here. And Judgment again. And the World. There you go. So that is the tarot deck. Now, Ex Vellum contains rules for using the tarot as a resolution mechanism. It adds a little bit of narrative flavor to the game. And that's one thing I want to stress about this. Again, I haven't played this yet, but the focus is very much on the narrative. And you'll see that as the narrator, you're supposed to kind of tailor these things as you go to what's happening to your group. Now, one of the bonuses for the Deathless Edition is you get these special blades that can be found. So each of them has a certain ability. So for example, this is Aldrakar, the Blade of Dissolution. Anyone wielding this blade gains an advantage when trying to strike armored or magically protected targets. The advantage means that you sort of reduce the difficulty in your favor in a combat situation. So the Blade of Palpitation. So you roll an additional black die and suffer 1 additional blood corruption when you deal HP damage to a target. We've got the Varukai, Blade of the Silent Roar. Curses the senses of its victims for 7 days and 7 nights. Got the Blade of the Night Garden. By suffering 1 bullet corruption, the wielder can trap a target using Goltelmar's brambles, then they gain advantage to strike the trapped creature. Then we've got the Rajilith. If the blade is regularly bathed in blood, it grants advantage when rolling nerves. If the blade is not fed for too long, it imposes disadvantage to rolls in Cerebrum. So you've got to keep feeding it blood or your brain will start to suffer. That's an interesting one. Then finally we have Ulgarat, the Blade Breaker. So you get advantage when fighting against armed foes, and you can easily destroy the other Blades of Ruin. How about that? Then we have interesting additional tidbits here. So we've got these sheets that give you really nice narrative starting points. A little bit hard to get out of the box. They're just about the exact same size. So each of these has a beautiful piece of colored artwork, as you can see on the back. So here it's describing kind of the background for a campaign, essentially. So as an example, this is the Fields of Death. Europe is a huge battlefield, the desolate portrayal of a hecatomb that never stops. Where the most vicious battles are fought, the muddy ground becomes a mosaic of corpses, steel, and blood. The banners wave for days, torn and filthy, bearing witness to the battles that raged not so long ago. In this landscape, you survived the cold embrace of the earth, but your body now bears the feverish marks of disease. While the road back home is long and probably rife with enemies, the journey is still worth the risk. One final push before eternal rest, and yet strange signs are revealed to you. Perhaps something inhuman has kept you alive for unfathomable reasons. And then inside, so you'll get kind of a campaign framework, if you like. So this is called a binding. So you'll have thematic references, in this case, steel, corpses, mud, ravens, war and conflict, legendary weapons, war heroes, and then to try to work out with your players what the characteristics of this campaign frame will be. So in this case, you might work out they're affected by the plague outbreak, but where? They all belong to a group with shared objectives. Could be a military unit, a free company, a battlefield pillagers, noble knights, or something else. Drifters are keepers of a great secret. What could it be? Before the beginning of the adventure, all drifters shared an omen. What was the name of the event foretold? The omen mentions a location where the event will take place. What is this location? And finally, the omen left 5 key symbolic concepts, also known as effigies, in the minds of the drifters. What are these symbols? And then there are some exclusive marks that you can have for these campaign frames. Mark of the eviscerated. You should have died a violent, unspeakable death, but while fatal, the disease is keeping you alive through its entire development. This is the work of a higher will. It has some keywords for that. And the mark of the scavenger. The world is inhabited by sacks of flesh and blood. When death arrives, they can become nourishment for you, if you could just manage to control your hunger. So, very cool. And basically, we've got a bunch of these. So we have as well the last pilgrimage. I'm not going to go through the details of all these. But again, you can see we've got a similar kind of structure. We have 6 questions to be answered by the group. Some thematic references. So this one's about melting wax, catacombs, murmured voices in the dark, etc. Faith and the courage to question it. Legendary relics, warrior saints, and harsh battles with the forces of evil. The mark of the keeper and the mark of the hermit. And then we have this very atmospheric illustration there. And this is the congregation. You are wise women who gather in the shade of the woods to train ancient secrets. Thematic concepts of the wood, grimoires written in blood, the fire, the full moon behind the trees, a daughter's dance, a mother's song. Then you have the mark of the gift and the mark of the womb. You feel a bond with all living things. Interesting. So a bit of a witchy, coven-y kind of vibe. Then we have a skeleton rising from the earth and a rather surprised looking dude right here. We have the Dance Macabre. You recently took on the roles of spies in the service of your lord and were sent to investigate strange events in a plague-ridden location. Well, that seems like a bad idea. Thematic references, ossuaries, black hoods covering faces, tombs overgrown with brambles, filthy shrouds, challenging the unknown, family curses, cultists, etc. We have the mark of the will of the wisp, so you can see the candles of the dead dancing in the night and can follow them, and mark of the hex. There is power in the resentment and envy that the dead feel for the living. Now that you are just inches away from the end, you can feel it. Destroying those who do not deserve happiness feels sublime. Yikes. Yeah, this is not a game for cheerful, Saturday night drunken sessions, I think. We've got a ship being grabbed by a kraken, it looks like. The shipwreck, so that's appropriate enough. The themes here, we've got the drifters are wrecks adrift on the waves, journeying to their final destination. Most ancient mysteries lie in the deep, and there are always horrors hiding beneath the water's surface. And here we have the mark of the Leviathan. The sea is the cradle of real giants. You dream of colossal creatures sleeping on the seafloor and can feel them whenever in the water. Will you aid their awakening or do your best to prevent it? And we have the mark of the Abyss. The disease brings visions. You feel the draft from invisible doors in the depths of the sea where light never reaches. Interesting. And finally, we have what looks to be a flaming, decaying building of some sort. This is the Endless Nights. We've got some heads on pikes there. It looks like an orc's head. As I mentioned, mythological creatures are real in this world, of course. And then once again, we have our themes. So the siege is slow but constant. Dawn is ever closer but seems to never come. So I guess you're under siege in this city, hence the visuals. Between the walls, there are many hidden secrets and mysteries to solve. The shelter will fall, this is certain. You just need to find a way to leave it with the right timing and company. So you can have the mark of the secret, where the fever clouds your thoughts but makes your memories of the past clear. Sometimes you can grasp the past of a place or object. It's as if you could hear them straining to tell you. Then you have the mark of dusk. Sooner or later, light must give way to darkness. You are the last flare. You could be a bastion of hope or choose to embrace the night, knowing that your path lies through the darkness. Very cool. So you got some great campaign frames set up right there for you to kind of grasp onto and start your game. You have these blades of ruin that you can throw in as powerful yet sort of demonic artifacts. You got the tarot for resolving certain game situations or narratively cooperating with your players to work out outcomes, and your dice in their beautiful bag. That's Arcafati. So we'll start at the natural beginning point, which would be the core rulebook. Okay, so this is the core rule book. It's quite hefty in terms of the number of pages, but nicely compact in its size. They give you some warnings here: 18 plus, fear, violence, and sex. So be aware of that. And throughout, I mean, the art makes very clear that this is a game for horror fanatics. You need to get into a deep and dark mood to truly enjoy this game. So the core book is really comprehensive in itself. You get a glimpse of the world in which you're playing. So not just Europe at the time of the Black Death, but also the Beyond the Veil, shadow of our world in which mythological terrors exist. The foundations of the game. So it gives you kind of starter rules, basic ideas of everything. So organs and blood, dice, slots, etc. Corruption. Then how to build a character. So the anatomy of a drifter, how corruption works. You can see there's 30 pages on that, because not only do you have all the different ways of being corrupted, but then you can gain gifts from your corruption. You can use them. The gifts can evolve. Then you can gain stigmata, which are pretty remarkable aspects that can be added onto your character as well. Playing as drifters, so basically how to use your characters. Then we've got the nature of the cosmos. So we talk more about the Beyond the Veil, what kind of creatures you can find there, the 5 princes and the great hosts that reside there, the other side of the veil, the mark and how that affects your drifters across history. And then here we get into the narrator's duties. So playing safely using lines and veils, running a session 0, whether you want to use a binding pact like we saw in Arcafati, how to build a story, and setting up an ending, because the game is designed to bring all the characters to an end eventually. Then we have a sample adventure here, the Burning Sky, and then we get right into the game. So throughout we've got this lovely sort of matte paper, really does give you that feel of a medieval tome. We've got always black and white illustrations. The book has this kind of grayish sort of singed around the edges vibe. Gives you a great feel for the way the game is supposed to come across. So of course in the beginning we have the basics of what is an RPG, how do you play this game, etc. I love this image here. So Europe and just a simple black rat and how their parasites brought the Black Plague to slaughter most of a continent. So we're talking about Europe at the time of the Black Death. So we're set in the years between 1347 and 1353. The terrible epidemic claimed 1/3 of the European population. So it's pretty grim. So your players are plagued and marked, and that will open your mind to a new parallel reality, lay eyes on a realm of darkness they could never imagine before. I mean, that's pretty dark. Bridge covered in corpses. We've got a historical overview, how the plague came about, the search for salvation. So religion was a thing that a lot of people clung to as a way to get out from this nightmare. Then we talk about Beyond the Veil. So normal humans are known as unawares. They don't know anything about the world beyond the veil. And they're two kind of parallel dimensions that coexist but never fully overlap. So it's a dark reflection of our world, and its laws of physics are similar to what we know, but distorted by supernatural elements. And their myths, legends, and superstitions reflected in the shapes of creatures beyond the veil. These entities are powerful and moved by ill intentions. So there's a lot you can do with that. There are, of course, gates and tears in the veil. It's not a different planet. It's not metaphysically located in a different dimension. It's completely superimposed on our own world like a shroud. It's very important to keep in mind. So you can have tears in the veil, temporary passages between the unaware world and the beyond the veil. Then there are, of course, creatures from beyond the veil. There's some examples here of the terrors that might await you. And it refers you to Codex Gigas for 40 examples of creatures that you'll find there. At the top, you have the princes, ancient demigods with powers beyond imagination. They have pacts that follow them known as hosts. Then they have the people beyond the veil, humanoids who live outside the prince's courts and are doing their best to survive despite the tyranny and pillaging of their hosts. Finally, there are the beasts, terrible monsters who follow no laws except those laid down by violence, hunger, and blood. So the princes are the ones leading all the intrigue, and then you'll have to deal as well with the random beasts following their own rules, and the hosts who carry out the wishes of the princes. Then we get into the foundations of the game. So we've got the narrator, that's the GM effectively. You've got the players. You're always using 6-sided dice we saw. They're either black or white, depending. The difficulty, so you need to score enough successes to beat a difficulty to succeed in action. The typical success will be a 5+ roll on a d6, but there are ways that can change as well. Then you have slots. These are the boxes on the drifter sheet that represent how many dice a player must roll. Then you've got 4 different organs, which are representing parts of the body and parts of who you are, which can gradually become corrupted, and they represent the physical, mental, and moral abilities of drifters. Then you have your blood, this mental and physical condition. So together with your organs, is the basis of all your rolls in the game. You always roll an organ plus your blood. Then you've got your names, bonds, and virtues, your memories, symbols, and epithets that mark the character's past and become their strength. And then you have the corruption process. So through corruption, you develop extraordinary powers, but there's a steep price to pay. So when you want to do an action in the game, you don't look to the dice, first of all, unless they're really needed. Basically, if it's critical or a risky situation, you want to roll the dice, but otherwise, you can just describe the outcome of the action if it's not interesting for the players to fail. And basically, they want the story to be very narrative in character, so story should unfold as a continuous exchange between narrator and players, and dice rolls interrupt the flow only when needed to accentuate specific situations or to keep everyone on the edge of their seat. Dice slots and difficulty. So this is key here. Difficulty can range from 1 to 5 plus. So you'd have to be really corrupted to really even hope to get that. Your slots can have 3 different states. An empty slot means that you don't get any dice for that slot. A full slot is colored black around the edges. That gives you 1 white die to your roll. If it's a corrupted slot, the square inside is blackened as well. And then you'll add a black die to your roll. And here it says, to score success, you roll a number equal to or higher than the success threshold, which is usually 5, but that can change depending on different situations. And they give an example here of a player who decides to try and hide away from a basilisk. Then they give you some advice on when to roll. So basically, if the success or failure could influence the narrative, then it's time to get the dice out. If it's not something that would really affect the narrative in any meaningful way, they say, I just want to go to the tavern and grab a beer, talk to a guy, don't worry about it. But if you want to use a gift, if you want to fight something from beyond the veil, if you want to convince somebody of something, that has potential narrative consequences, therefore you should roll. The way you do that is a player states their action and narrates their approach. The player identifies the organ and any other attributes that might apply. So typically you'll choose an organ plus your blood, and then you might have other things that feed in, like your virtues or your bonds, and they can give you additional dice. Then the narrator will give you the difficulty to succeed and apply any bonuses or penalties to the success threshold. Then you roll the dice to count the number of successes, and then you just narrate the outcome depending on what the dice come out as. And remember that rolling a 6 on a black die will corrupt you, but give you 3 successes for that single die. And all along throughout, by the way, they're giving you descriptions of horrible things from beyond the veil. Then we talk more about organs and blood, and they give examples at every stage, so it's really easy to kind of understand the basics of the game as you go through. Everything is given plentiful examples. They all are easy to follow. When you're talking about names, virtues, and bonds, you always have a nickname or epithet, and you can use that to gain an advantage in different situations. The virtues are the practical and theoretical skills that you have, so you might be a merchant, an acrobat, a seducer, or an artist, something like that. And then you have their bonds, so this is kind of your life before your time as a drifter, so bits of yourself that you hold on to. So examples would be like, memories of your father and the days at sea, my wolf, the taste of blood, my old mentor, the will to stand up again. And then these can be called into play if you are making a roll, and the names, virtues, or bonds of a character can come into play. You can add a number of dice equal to the slots in the relevant attribute to their basic roll. For every roll, you can only call on one attribute between names, virtues, and bonds. So you can't call on name and virtue. You can only call on one of or the two, for example, even if they both apply. Then you have corruption. So basically, when an action has crucial consequences on the game, then whenever a player makes a roll that involves corrupted slots, they must add to the pool a black die. An uncorrupted slot always grants a white die, and a corrupted slot always grants a black die. So rolling a 6 on a black die, you gain a special type of success known as a dark success, worth as much as 3 normal successes. And then you blacken 1 blood slot. And when you roll a 1 on a black die, you score a dark failure, which will erase a success you gained with another die. So that's one of the reasons I thought the 1 on the black dice might have a cool symbol on it, just to sort of remind you of that. And there's these nice little side notes as well. So they talk about how in chapter 4, it explains how corruptions work, and basically blood corruption can seep into your organs over time. The blood corruption can keep resetting, but then once it resets, the corruptions in your blood must travel elsewhere into other parts of your character. So your anatomy of a drifter, you have a small version of the character sheet here. Basically, you have your name, you have your dream. So this is your last great ambition, what you want to do with your last moments on Earth as a drifter. Your mark, so the plague leaves a peculiar mark on your body, and these spots speak to the darkest side of the wearer and reveal omens of a dark future. Then you have your organs, which you have your nerve, your cerebrum, your heart, your viscera, and then your blood, and represents their physical and psychological state. And so that's really how the corruption mechanic is governed. Then you have your bonds, which are kind of your narrative aspects that I mentioned before, which are tied to specific memories of your past self. They can be corrupted as well. Ask on your name, ask on your virtues, which your practical knowledge. Again, they give you 1 die. The bonds give you 2 die if you call them into play. And then you have your starting equipment, and stigmata can develop if you find those as well. And there are spaces there for your gifts. Just to make things a little bit easier, I've got an example here of a full-size character sheet. So this is a blank one, just so you can see more clearly how it looks. So yeah, you have your dream, your mark, your bonds here, your most precious memories, key phrases that relate to those bonds, and the gift of your bonds. And your gift develops along this track here. Then you have your virtues, and a new instinct that surfaces when your virtues disappear. So the more corrupted you get, you can gain supernatural powers through your gifts, and through your instincts, and through your stigmata. Then you've got your name, which has 2 slots next to it as well, and the gift of your name. So what new identity will emerge after you sacrifice your name? You can have a gift there. Then you have your blood, mental and physical conditions, nerve, your instinct, cerebrum, your reason, heart, your life devoted to others, and your viscera, which is your self-interest. And then you have your equipment slots down here as well. Now, as an example of a fully made out character, well, mostly. So here we have Rhea the Raven. So she's got her name and her epithet, the Raven. The gifts have not been filled in, so they leave that for the player. But this is one of the pre-gen characters you get when you download your copy of the game. She has 1 slot in nerve, 3 slots in cerebrum, so she's very clever. 1 slot in viscera, not so much guided by her guts, and 2 slots in heart, so she likes to help others. And her dream is finding a cure for the plague, which is very selfless. She's got 3 bonds, the fragrant branch, with a key phrase associated with it, the raven Aslan, and the grief, pain brings us closer. And then gifts of the bonds, again not yet filled in. It's for you to develop with the narrator as a character becomes more and more corrupted. Her virtues, she's an apothecary, so she can help heal people. She's alert, and she's got skillful hands. In her equipment, she's got a sickle, worn clothes, a bag of ingredients, bandages, and travel supplies. So she's got a friendly raven, a sickle to chop people with, and then ingredients and bandages to help heal others. So that's an example of how a character looks in this game. Not too complicated, but you do have to be creative in how you think, particularly about your bonds, your virtues. Having a cohesive character concept will really help you get into the vibe of the game, because then it'll mean something when you get corrupted. So that's the anatomy of a drifter. And then they talk a bit about the drifter's journey and the basics of character creation. So you come up with or choose 3 virtues, come up with or choose 3 bonds, come up with or choose your name and epithet, assign 3 additional organ slots. So you start with 1 white slot in each organ, and then you assign 3 more somewhere. Talk with the narrator to define your character's starting equipment, and then come up with your dream in session 0 in accordance with your previous choices. And there's examples for all of these, and so we get descriptions of each of these elements, which we won't go into in detail, to show off the cool artwork here. Then you've got your organ slots, describe each of them in detail. So again, when you're making a roll, you will use your blood, however many slots you have, and the appropriate colored dice. So here we'd have 1 black die, 2 white die, and then each of these organs starts with 1 die in each. Then, as I mentioned, you have 3 additional slots to plug in at character creation. You can max out at 3 in any given organ slot, and then you'll roll black or white dice according to how corrupted that organ is and how many slots you have. Then you have your blood. It always has 3 slots, and one of them is always corrupted. So keep that in mind. Then you have your bonds, and they have 2 slots. And you have 3 bonds. You got your virtues. You've got examples. You've got some practical examples of starting equipment, and then quick creation of drifters. You can do it randomly. So you can roll for a name and an epithet, which is handy. You can roll for virtues, and then we have yet more virtues here. So quite a big list to choose from if you can't be bothered to think of one, which is very helpful, I think, for a lot of players who just want to get into it to see how the game feels. Drifter bonds, you can roll for those as well. So you roll 2d6 and sort of look at the 2 numbers and follow that result on the table. And you want to pick 3 of those bonds. So you'll do that 3 times. And you see, again, quite a few options. Then we've got corruption. So this is a key element of the game. So whenever your blood is fully corrupted, that's crucial, and you'll have to make some critical choices at that point. You can get your name corrupted, you can have your organs corrupted, and create stigmata, which are horrible mutations and manias. You can corrupt your virtues, you can corrupt your bonds, you get your supernatural powers from your gifts. Then they talk about stigmata, so a list of transformation, curses, and defects ready to use as well. So again, they've done a nice job of making sure that you have plenty of examples to work with, but you always have the choice of creating your own of these different aspects by collaboration with the narrator. So blood is key. So if you suffer some kind of trauma, whether it's psychological or physical, then it'll be represented by one blood slot becoming corrupted. So they give examples like if you gain no dark success, if you suffer physical or psychological damage, if you call on the power of your dream, if you act to create an advantage for another character. So you can help somebody out, but you get your blood corrupted in the process. And they refer to that as BC. If you have no empty blood slots and you have to get corrupted, you clear all corrupted blood slots and you choose one slot from an organ, virtue, bond, or name and blacken it. This also happens whenever the number of blood slots to corrupt exceeds the number of free blood slots. And if you suffer more than one blood corruption, then you go through the same process, but you'll have to potentially blacken additional slots. If you get 4 blood corruption points, then you'll corrupt the remaining 2 blood slots. Then you'll have to reset everything and corrupt something on one of your organ, virtues, bonds, or names. You still have to apply the next 2 slots, at which point it'll be full again. You have to reset it again and then apply another dot of corruption to your name, organ, virtue, or bond. So yeah, with terrifying corrupted creatures, you can suffer pretty quickly from growing corruption. And of course, if you get dark successes, those really help you succeed in a very powerful way, but then you end up getting corrupted from that as well. So what to corrupt? That's a big question. So it's a choice you can't undo. And depending on what your goal is with your character, how you see their arc proceeding, you want to think carefully about what slot you corrupt once you have run out of your blood slots that can be corrupted. So if you corrupt your name, you will end up sort of being left with only an epithet, and then you create a gift of the name, which will be a new darker epithet. Then when you unlock the gift of the name, you create a new epithet by following the rules outlined above. This new epithet hides a distinctive supernatural power. So you discuss that and approve it together with the narrator. When you lose the name entirely, so you must erase the first name of your character from the drifter sheet, and then you're solely known as whatever your dark epithet is. So if you're known as the Blood Reaper with your dark epithet, then your original name is gone. You've forgotten your past name from your memory. All unawares who know you have forgotten your real name, and basically your past identity is essentially gone, and only the other drifters may remember some of that. And sometimes creatures from beyond the Black Veil will find the drifter easier to recognize because you've been corrupted in this way. Now, if you corrupt your organs, the first time an organ is corrupted to the point that all of its assigned slots are black, the player must create a stigmata. So you trace over the borders of the first circle near the stigma and mark a box to represent the spread. And then you create a stigmata, which again is a narrative process. So you need to create something that is a painful impairment initially, deformation, amputation, defacement, or injury. It could also be a mania, phobia, obsession, or fanaticism about something. And then there are stigmata of a more sinister and supernatural nature. So it could be mutations of a monstrous type. After imagining that stigma, you then focus on the dark magic that it contains. They can allow you to take automatic actions that can't be measured or enhanced by rolling dice. So you simply will be able to perform a small portent as easily as you can walk or breathe. So you might be able to make anything appear beautiful, debilitating or killing smaller life forms, glide through the air for small distances, have visions of someone's past when touching their corpse, control swarms of insects, communicate with animals, stuff like that. And you just do it. You don't have to roll dice. The power and manifestation of a stigma should remain in the background until a player decides to bring it to the forefront. So when you manifest it, your deformity is on full display. Your terrible condition becomes visible to everyone. And then a player who does this, the narrator will have control over the negative consequences. After you manifest the stigma and suffering the immediate consequences, you blacken all active circles beside the stigma, and that represents how many times they can use the power. Every black circle is a charge and grants a one-time use of the power given by the stigma, but you don't need to roll the dice to use the power. Once the power is used, the player then has to clear out one circle representing a used charge of the stigma. Once all the circles are empty, they'll have to manifest again to recharge the stigma, so you'll face that negative consequence again. Pretty cool. Then corrupting your virtues. So your virtue may be, in the example, if you were a smith, that means that you could shape, build, mend, and forge metal objects. But if you corrupt that virtue, you lose those skills. It's as if you never had them. But you can come up with a gift of the virtues that allows you to melt and shape metal with your bare hands as if it was clay, as a kind of replacement for that. Of course, there are ups and downs to all these powers in the game. Corrupting your bonds as well. These are really dark. So basically, powers born from corrupting bonds are more than impressive. They should be imagined with a certain ability to grow. So blackening the first slot of a bond should give the drifter a gift with significant power and outreach that is already relevant while still being in its rougher, less developed form with room to grow. So the way it could grow could be, being able to reach more targets, having a stronger impact, etc. And when you lose a bond, you can still use the attribute as before, and you can use the gift gained from the corruption, but then you can only add one white d6 to your pool. When the second slot is corrupted, the player will have lost all ability to rely on the bond, and they'll have to erase it from their drifter sheet. So yeah, again, pretty dark. So your memories of yourself that you cling to start to disappear as you get more corrupted. Then you have your gifts. So there's one gift for each of the main characteristics: a gift of the name, a gift of the bonds, and a gift of the virtues. Each time that you blacken a slot associated with one of those characteristics for the first time, you'll come up with a gift. And gifts are extraordinary abilities that can take loads of forms. Concepts we would define as benevolent, protective, admirable, or luminous will never be included in a drifter's gift. So they're always going to be bad. They give you some hot tips about creating gifts, so to make them fit in with your character, and then you can develop your powers as well. So each of the gifts, as you saw on the character sheet, has the additional slots here. When you corrupt a slot tied to the name, bond, or virtue, you must also remember to check off a box for the relevant gift, beginning from the left and proceeding towards the right. When you check off a box on the right side of a diamond, that means, so you've corrupted this one, and the next one is here, then your gift will evolve. So you go through a great change due to the huge level of corruption. They give some hot tips on that later. So gifts, you'll need to make a roll. It's not like stigmata. You have to actually roll dice for these. So you roll a pool of d6 by adding up the slots of an organ, of blood, as well as all black slots in the attribute tied to the gift. Using a gift means you're going to be rolling a lot of black dice, which can lead to more corruption, which can, you see how it goes. That's why the characters don't tend to last much longer than 5 to 7 sessions. And then there's some discussion about how to think about your gifts evolving. And then here's what we really were hoping for, or at least what I was hoping for after watching Dave's review. Some example gifts, and they've got loads of them for different marks. So the Dawn, the Ferryman, the Mark of the Reaper. So let's pick Mark of the Reaper. So the examples are ashes to ashes. You can turn parts of your body into dust. They'll return to their original state after a short time. This gift allows you to hide or fit in places too small for your whole body. You have habit and scythe. You can temporarily manifest a habit of pure darkness or a huge rusty scythe. The habit fills anyone who meets your eyes with dread. The scythe is a striking and brutal weapon. Or funerary poison. You can use a corpse or an open wound to distill a deadly serum that can be used as poison. The properties of this viscous liquid decay quickly. How cool is that? So we've got a list of those for all these different possible marks that were noted in the random roll table there. Then we got some more info about stigmata, and they can evolve as well. So once the third and last progress box is filled, then the player and narrator choose how the dark power hidden within the scourge plaguing the drifter should increase. So the power is not the only thing that grows, though. The mutation, mania, or curse that goes with the stigmata is also more serious and more apparent when you manifest it. So the more it evolves, the more negative consequences will come with it too. Here's some example stigmata. Again, you roll 2d6 and check through this lengthy table, everything from schizophrenia, partial blindness, rotten teeth, a rat tail, alien eye, ravenous worm, anthills, lunar magnetism, parasites, black tongue, claustrophobia, all kinds of interesting stuff. Twisted eyesight, albinism, cannibalism, and then they give you some tips here about playing as drifters. So these are all the kind of player-facing mechanics. You note that the narrator doesn't roll dice. This is one of the games where everything is player-facing. So the basic idea is you need to beat the threshold, which is usually 5, to score success on a die. 6 on a black die will give you your dark success, which is 3 normal successes and 1 blood corruption. A black d6 with a score of 1 is a dark failure and erases 1 success earned by another d6. If you are lower than difficulty, the roll has failed. If the number of successes is higher than difficulty, then you've fully reached your goal. If the number of successes is equal, you've succeeded, but you'll have to pay a small price. Leave yourself in some more danger, leave some tracks behind you, or create some hardships for one of your party. The person narrating the consequences will change depending on what happens. So if the roll fails, the narrator will describe what happens to the drifter, to everyone at the table. If the roll succeeded, the player will describe how the drifter has overcome the challenge. If the roll was succeeded at a cost, the player will describe how the drifter overcame the challenge and discuss with the narrator about the price they need to pay. Success threshold is the minimum score you need to roll to gain success, and you can have penalties and bonuses to that. Bonuses lower the threshold by 1, making it easier, and penalties increase by 1, making it harder, but you can never have a threshold go below 2 or above 6, obviously. And they talk about positioning in the fiction. That basically is a key concept in narrative games, and it's nice that they include a little bit about that. It'll help you with playing other games in this genre like PBTA or Forged in the Dark kind of games as well. You can call upon the power of the dream only once in each game session. Basically, it allows you to overturn a result from a roll by influencing the result of white die. All d6s that did not roll a success are turned into successes, but for every d6 transformed in this way, you suffer 1 blood corruption. extremely powerful, but very potentially corrupting as well. Then you've got fighting. So fighting is considered just like any other sequence of actions for the most part. There's no initiative or anything like that. Approach takes priority. So the player should use your narrative freedom and describe your actions in detail. And then if you decide to attack a target, you're bound to expose yourself to some risk. So when you roll against the difficulty of your target, if you succeed, then you will deal a number of hit points equal to the positive differential in successes compared to the difficulty of the creature. So, if they have difficulty of 2 and you score 4, then you do 2 HP of damage to them. If you roll a number of successes less of the difficulty, then you suffer a number of blood corruption equal to the negative differential. So the same, but if you needed 4 successes and only got 2, then you gain 2 blood corruption. Finally, if the result is equal, then you deal 1 HP, but you have to pay a price. And an opponent is defeated when its HP are drawn down to 0. When you deal the last blow, you can spare them, kill them, or make them harmless. So you can do with the opponent as you please. You can also create advantage. So these are things that you can do in the fiction. You'll suffer 1 blood corruption, but you don't have to roll. So you can use weaknesses you've learned about monsters from beyond the veil to weaken them and gain advantage for your allies, but that will cost you 1 blood corruption as well. Then you'll have the effects of equipment, which again, the narrator is free to choose how to manage magical or abominable items. They could give you a threshold bonus, have constant effects, or have limited uses, like adding a d6 in set circumstances or in exchange for blood corruption. Then we have some example opponents and threats, and they're really simple. You just need 2 numbers for the difficulty of 1, for example, and HP of 3 for the villager. So this is an unaware, like many who is not used to combat. In such cases, the HP of villagers could even fall to 2 if they're really malnourished and debilitated. Then we've got, increasingly more difficult creatures, beasts from beyond the veil, difficulty 4, HP 7, spectral hound, shapeshifters, the end of a drifter. Now, so when a drifter blackens the last organ slot or the last slot tied to their names, bond, and virtues, they have reached their end. So you bring the story to a halt and describe how the drifter's transformation reaches its peak, turning them into the member of the host from beyond the veil. So you can always try to avoid this. Corruption is a process. You can slow it down by using less corrupting abilities, which exposes you to more risk, but allows you to carry on for longer in the fiction. And so that is where the tension really arises in the game. You can either spend those gifts and, you use your dreams and all that stuff and gain loads of blood corruption, fall apart earlier in the story, or you can hang on longer and suffer more trials along the way. But it should be a big narrative moment, and you're basically fully turned over to the darkness beyond the veil. So here we have some details about the nature of the cosmos, so some information about beyond the veil, the gates between them, the geography of the world beyond the veil, the paths within, runes and locations of ages past, the nature of gates and tears in the veil, the hecatomb. This is a place where a bloody event has led to the sudden death of a vast group of unawares. So beyond the veil becomes closer to the mortal world, permeating it. So that's a hecatomb field. You can have tormented spirits that appear. The antechamber is an interesting one. So being a drifter means you have access to a source of raw, uncontrollable power. Often due to their inexperience in managing such phenomenon, drifters can release terrifying supernatural powers. Your magic can get out of hand, unleashing horrors into the world around them like a divine scourge. So you can also summon a place of pure madness, one that belongs neither to the unaware world nor to the beyond the veil, and that's the antechamber. It appears like an impossible maze where the laws of physics are unstable and spatial paradoxes are commonplace. So there you go. Then you have to basically escape from it. It's like a trap of the mind. Then you have the nightmare realm. The antechamber is a place that leads to other areas of even greater nastiness and power. And it wasn't until drifters revealed their abilities to reach the antechamber that some of the worst entities out there began to notice them. So that's a problem. There's no description of the nightmare realm, also known as the nightmare. It's a legendary dimension and everyone imagines and describes it differently. It's the Valhalla of corruption, the endless torment, the all-consuming darkness. Now we have some creatures beyond the veil. Again, they point you to Codex Gigas for more. So we have the ones who came before. Then below them we have the princes. So the most powerful creatures in the dark world. We have the ritual of the year 1000 and how that was involved in things. Conspiracy and the first drifters. We're getting into the history here. The birth of the pentarchy. I won't go too much into this because I think it's more fun to discover the setting details through play and through reading these very atmospheric books on your own. You see, there's lots of crazy, beautiful, and disturbing images throughout here. Very much giving you the vibe of the setting. The people of Beyond the Veil, they don't look like people I want to meet particularly. He's got a spider face going on. He's some kind of multi-eyed raven thing. A goal shared by all people beyond the veil is their mission to deliver drifters to the prince. So be careful of that. It's not something you want to happen. Then you have the beasts, who have their own goals. And you have the exiles, who have abandoned their realm and beyond the veil to establish themselves in the mortal world among the unaware. And you have forged spirits, you have gate parasites, which I won't spoil for you, supernatural fauna, you have incompletes as well, and we have the other side of the veil. So human mortality pushes most people to obsess about time constantly, thus leading most humans to reflect about their past, to fret about the present, and to try making plans for the near and distant future. Time is the motor that pushes mortals to evolve, to strive for better living conditions for themselves, to create new things and build monuments that will last over time. The people of Beyond the Veil have the potential to live far longer than humans do. So some of these creatures have been around for a long time. The lack of transience in their life, of an imminent end looming on the horizon, of the inexorable passage of time, makes it so these creatures mostly focus on the present. So they don't get attached to the past, the future, or to places or things. They see time only as a sequence of things happening in the present. They're also a people without a history, apparently. We have the Great Plan of the Five, which we won't spoil here. The cult of the ones who came before. So they're entities from a time so ancient that no faithful description of them survives. A bunch of those. Again, very cool imagery here. Then we have the marks. So you reach a high enough level of corruption, they forget even for just an instant they are human. That marks the beginning of a process called, in Diaries of Past Drifters, the Dark Revival. That's where you start to get some kind of mark. And here we have the Mark of the Dawn, the Ferryman, the Reaper, the Hunter, the Limitless, the Judge, the ones who came before, Mark of the Shroud, the Mark of the Forebears, Mark of the Elixir, and Mark of the Nightmare. So all of these are the core ones, but as you saw in Arcafati, there are some additional ones if you were lucky enough to get hold of the Deathless Edition. Then we've got drifters across history. So a little bit of history of how drifters have evolved over time, their relationship to the unawares. And here we get into the GM section. These days, it's typical that we want to have safety tools and lines and veils and so forth. I'm not against these as a concept, as some people are, but I do think that in general, if your group trusts you, like I asked my group if they wanted lines or veils or X cards or any of that stuff, and they said, no, we trust you not to go over the line, and that was the end of the discussion. And that might be the same for you. Other people might be more sensitive about certain things, and that's okay too. But I do think that, in the space of a horror game like this, or Call of Cthulhu or whatever, or Cult Divinity Lost for a particularly strong example, you should be prepared to push those boundaries. Make yourself face your deepest and darkest a little bit. I think that makes the experience much more meaningful. And this game is a pretty serious game. It's not got the camp element of horror that you find in something like Shiver. This is about darkness, corruption, inevitable death, the nature of evil, and becoming something horrendous. And you should lean into that, feel the bad feelings. Not to the point where you injure yourself, obviously, mentally or physically, but, try and push yourself a little bit just to get that extra kick, if you like, of that deep and dark horror that lies at the goal of this game. So they talk about the duties of the narrator besides that, so describing the world, setting up a flexible adventure, allows a lot of player agency, in other words, defining the difficulty of challenges, underlying the dramatic fate of drifters. Good practices for narrators, like listening to player ideas, staying aware of pillars and duties, talk to the drifters, not to players. So make sure that you speak to the characters and you remind the players they're characters in this session. They are not trying to bring in their outside knowledge. Try not to say no. Use player ideas in a way that makes sense. So don't let them run roughshod over you, but try to incorporate things so that people feel involved. Use tension, explore horror. Session 0, I think, is definitely a requirement in this game, just because you need to pick some kind of campaign framework and making sure that the players have everything they need to understand and engage with the game to create drifters together so that they have some sort of reason to be together. That also allows the narrator to make sure that they can come up with an idea for an adventure that fits this group. Then you have different phases in Session 0, which I talk about in some detail here. How to link your drifters together, then creating them, some final touches, and then how to build the story. So the anatomy of an adventure. You start with an omen, some sort of dispute, meet some factions, encounter milestones and challenges, locations, NPCs, and horrors. And they describe again each of those in detail. So tons of good narration tools here for the GM. Setting up the dispute, lining up factions. Oh god, that thing is really horrible. What the hell is that? I don't even want to know. Establishing milestones. So these are critical things that will happen to the drifters that will sort of help them kind of get immersed fully in the dispute that lies at the core of the adventure. Turning points and developments. So what are key moments in the narrative that might develop? And the final milestones. You want to give the players some time to think about what they've had to sacrifice on this journey before they reach the final ending point of the adventure. And setting up challenges, of course, which could be physical challenges, mental challenges, NPCs, horrors, and threats will tie into that, as well as locations. There's loads of great tips, and all very readable in bullet points and short paragraphs. That's a great picture as well. Very horrific. And then the true ending. Basically, this is a secret for the narrator, so let's not talk about that. And there's some practical tips, dealing with scenes and developing them, epilogues, resisting the darkness, connecting the dots in your story. And then we have The Burning Sky, which is a pre-made adventure. So they give you the initial context, the drifters, one of whom I showed you before. That's Rhea, the Raven, who's a healer. We have Petrus, Empty Eyes, the Ruffian, Warren, Ghostfoot, the Pilgrim, and Lars, Dead Ember, former soldier. And there's a summary of the adventure, and then we get into the details of it, which I shall skip merrily through, just stopping to look at some cool art, which is everywhere in this game. Cool stuff. And there's material here for a number of sessions, which is great. And again, really cool and atmospheric artwork. So it even plans it out sort of session by session. Very good intro to the game. And then we have the pre-gen character sheets at the end. Of course, you can download these as PDFs if you buy the book as well. And then a blank character sheet. And there's some info here on the last quest. So that's the kind of campaign framework. And there you go. That's Memento Mori, the core rule book. The next two books I'm going to go through relatively quickly because I think these have some very useful secrets for the players and GMs to discover. And there's an awful lot of text because these books are not, they're designed to fit with the narrative scope of the game. And so things aren't given straightforward stats or anything like that. It's sort of up to the narrator and players to work these into the game. So in Codex Gigas, this is kind of a first-person account, basically, by a legendary drifter. And he describes all of these creatures from beyond the veil, of which there are many. Herbarium, so this is some key ingredients, flowers, plants, and stuff like that you can use for different purposes. Lapidarium, so here we have some creepy ingredients for stuff, and then some final notes about the goal of the manuscript. So there's a bit of a preamble, and just how to read it. So basically, the idea is that this Father Gustav, Abbot of Podlazice, humble servant of God, follower of the rule of St. Benedict, Lamb of His Holiness Gregory IX. This is a diary of the illness and what happens during each year and each place. So it really is a true first-person account. I spent 40 years traveling in the desert beyond the veil. At least that's just how many I could count. So this poor guy did a lot of exploration of a horrible place. And they even set it up, with a title page and everything. So we have the cosmogony. There's a nice warning here. This book is a precious aid for the God-fearing believer who seeks out ways to defend themselves from the evils of beyond the veil and to safeguard their soul. Readers who are weak in spirit, beware. This codex is not for them as it contains aberrations, horrors, blasphemies, and curses. Also beware to the followers of evil who wish to use this book for their debauched goals. The kingdom of God is coming. None of you will be spared from his final judgment. And when judgment comes, the scourge described here will turn against the ungodly, for so it is written. Very cool, very atmospheric. So they talk about basic concepts, what lies beyond the veil, drifters in the underwear, gates and where to find them, and the gate parasites that might inhabit them, surviving and exploring in the world beyond the veil, journeys and time perception in that world, the powers beyond the veil, so some more details about the princes, the hosts, the pentarchy, the exiles, the shadows. Then we get into the bestiarium. So these are individual beasties that you might face in your journeys beyond the veil or who might manifest beyond, depending. So we have the Alu. They have difficulty 4, HP 8. That's all the stats you get. Then they have a special ability. When a character suffers blood corruption because of a noxious cloud, they must roll 1d6. The result of 1 to 4 means nothing happens. On a 5, you suffer a threshold penalty of 1 to all actions until the end of the scene. And on a 6, the character suffers a stigma of the player's choice. Wow. So yeah, pretty tough. And then we get details of their appearance, stories about them, and what their weaknesses might be and their particular dangers. And then some of them have additional notes here, which I won't spoil for you. We have the Arachnymph, which is terrifying. Difficulty 2 to 3, HP 8. Their difficulty varies depending on their size and military rank. They fight efficiently but have no special features. They lay ambushes, set traps, and carry out targeted strikes, and impose a 1 threshold penalty to the first actions characters take in a fight. And again, appearances, stories, and dangers, plus some possible bonuses you can get if you defeat them. Called the Astral Ephemera. So they only take a material form when fighting, and they only try to fight when feeding on darkness. So they have a difficulty of 3 and an HP of 9, but when they're incorporeal, you'd have difficulty defeating them, of course. And they can grant you some interesting stuff, perhaps. Astral Globes. We've got the Banshee, a classic. It's got its whale, which can call forth their undead servants from underground. The result on 1d6 will determine the combined difficulty of the servants. You can either use that value as a single servant or divide it among several weaker undead. Very cool. So she can wail to rise undead from the earth and fight you in her stead. Got the Basilisk, difficulty 5. Wow, HP of 10. So if you're wounded by the petrifying bite of the Basilisk, you can choose to deal 1 blood corruption to stop the petrification process. If you don't, the body part will be petrified by the end of the scene. If a character manages to strike the Basilisk's weak spot, the monster's difficulty drops to 3. There you go. Again, we'll skip over all the cool info that you should find out during play. We've got the Blemier. I'll try to pronounce that. Difficulty 2, HP 7. Very creepy looking thing with a giant gaping mouth in his chest and no head. When you suffer 1 blood corruption from their poison weapon, they suffer 1 threshold penalty to all actions, they being the character. This lasts until the antidote is applied. A character who suffers 1 BC from their weapon will suffer 1 blood corruption at the beginning of each subsequent scene until they visit a surgeon. So the corruption sticks with you. That's bad. Got their stories, appearance, and dangers. Got the Clothed Ape. Difficulty 2, HP 6. Not a great threat in combat, but they are able to fly and control the air. So by using this power and involving large objects near the characters, the narrator can set exchanges of blows at a higher difficulty. So look out for that. And we've got the Cockatrice, difficulty 4, HP 9. So you can become paralyzed by their bite, and it lasts all the way through the scene. Not great. We have the Corpusants and Other Fires. Difficulty, HP, So they're incorporeal and thus invulnerable. Characters can choose whether to follow the path the Corpusant chose to them or to ignore them completely. Either way, they will face grave danger. Okay, so it's a lose-lose situation. Interesting. We have the Cynocephalus, difficulty 2 to 3, HP 6 to 8. Notice we have some nice silk ribbons in these books as well. Difficulty varies depending on the creature's experience. Lone specimens who roam beyond the veil are often formidable warriors, and their difficulty should be increased by 1. Then we've got the Dragon. Oh my god, look how terrifying that is. Is that a city down there? Oh my god. Difficulty, HP, It's not an opponent the characters can face. Its powers are godlike, beyond the reach of even princes of beyond the veil. Okay, so they're basically a plot point. Yeah, they have stories and no dangers. So if a dragon appears, run. They're coming from the nightmare dimension to rip you to shreds and everybody else. Then we have the Empusa, difficulty 3, HP 7. When you kill an Empusa, you risk being involved in the blazing explosion of the creature's viscera. When this happens, all characters near the defeated Empusa suffer 1 blood corruption. There's just so much corruption in this game, so many ways to get it. We have the Exiled Griffin, difficulty 4, HP 9. You can only fight them by having superior numbers, and you need an incisive strategy because they're almost completely immune to fire, lightning, and illusions of all kinds. Wow. We've got the Ghoul. Excellent illustration there. So creepy. So difficulty 2, not too bad, but HP 7. In their elemental form, they'll try to scatter or slow down characters. When they do this, their difficulty increases to 3. To fight against characters when trying to feed, the Ghoul will take on material form. In this form, they can attack in melee with bare hands or from a distance with blasts of scalding sand. I note that it says Empusa there, which is obviously a typo, but the PDFs have been updated, and I imagine future printings will be updated to fix some of these typos as well. I haven't found anything major or game-breaking in the typographical errors in my initial scans of these books anyways. Got the Goblins and Little Folk, difficulty 1 to 4, HP 4 to 8, big range there. So the preferred weapon is Deception. If in or out of combat, characters research these creatures in depth and discover the truth beneath their lies, they can earn substantial threshold bonuses. Time to use that library use. Then we've got the Hamadryad, difficulty 2 to 3, HP of 6. Difficulty determined by how much resentment the creature feels. When they win an exchange of blows, the Hamadryad can trap her opponent with her roots. If she chooses to do this, she deals no blood corruption, but the trapped character suffers 1 threshold penalty and becomes unable to move. And we have the Harpy. another classic mythological creature. Difficulty 2, HP 5. They're immune to fire and lightning, but water attacks can provide additional advantages. To defeat them, the best option is drowning. To do this, you must win an exchange of blows and state they want to hold the harpy's head below water. When this happens, the harpy dies instantly. Ooh, handy. Then we have Heretic Mules, difficulty HP ? The mule never takes part in physical combat, as his weapons are of a different kind. If he gives the order, his adoring followers will attack. They have a difficulty of 2 and 4 HP. If backed into a corner, the mule uses his magic to vanish into thin air. Wow, okay. Then we have the Hydra, really disgusting version of the classic creature. Difficulty 5, wow, HP 12. So if you fight them with normal weapons, you suffer 1 threshold penalty. So you have to roll a 6. You can use burning weapons to gain 1 threshold bonus. A blow that manages to strike the human head hidden amongst the creature's limbs will deal 2 additional HP, but still difficulty 5, not easy. Then we have the Kelpie and Illusory Animals. Difficulty of 3, HP of 8. I love this. He looks like a relatively nasty but somewhat normal horse's head. And beneath is this disgusting, corrupted, gross bones and viscera. A character who falls for the Kelpie's illusion and mounts on his back suffers 2 blood corruption. Wow. And is stuck on the creature. They can also rely on a pool of 4 additional HP represented by their bone spears. Characters must get through these 4 additional HP before they can wound the creature. Yikes. Then we've got kobolds, difficulty 1, HP 4. They're not especially dangerous, but they love to ambush and should not be underestimated. When they hide in their conite material and gain the jump on characters, the difficulty increases to 3. Okay, so watch out for their ambushes. We've got the kraken and sea serpents. These creatures are too massive and resistant to be defeated with conventional weapons. You only harm them by officiating a powerful and complex magic ritual, or being crazy enough to dive into the monster's mouth and fighting it from within. Difficulty 5, HP ? So I guess the difficulty represents the difficulty of jumping inside them. Then we have the Krampus. Oh, another classic. So difficulty 3, HP 10. When fighting a Krampus, you suffer 1 threshold penalty unless they outnumber the creature by at least 3 to 1. Leading the Krampus onto consecrated ground or using an exorcism against it can temporarily lower the creature's difficulty to 2. Oh, I love the Krampus. What a classic. Then we got the Lamii and Succubi. So demonic ladies, difficulty of 2, HP 5. When they prevail in an exchange of blows, they can choose to deal only 1 blood corruption and drink the blood of the wounded character. After this, their difficulty grows by 1. Fire or light-based attacks always deal 2 additional HP against these creatures. Cool. Lepidian, difficulty 4, HP 10, looks enormous. They don't understand violence and know no combat discipline. When forced to fight, they generally choose to destabilize their opponent by causing an earthquake. This earth magic can scatter characters and have a great impact on the story. Oh, that's cool. They're more of a narrative creature rather than something you fight in a normal way. Then we got the Lar. That's an ethereal creature, difficulty 3, HP 9. It can only be damaged by extremely precise and strong blows. If you win an exchange of blows, you must deal at least 3 HP for your attacks to be considered successful. Nice. Then we have the Leviathan of Darkness. Oh my god, that's super gross. Looks like something out of Kingdom Death, if you've ever played that game. Difficulty ? HP ? Like the dragon, it's not an opponent characters can face. Even earning the right to see her, let alone speak with her, can be considered an impressive feat. So now the plot device creature. We've got mares and hags. They are difficulty 3, HP 9, stronger and better fighters than they look. They also can animate anything, turning non-living matter into a precious ally. They must sacrifice a number of HP of their choosing to create a creature with difficulty and HP equal to that number. Cool. We've got night lemurs. Oh god, what is that? Is that really a lemur? Difficulty 2, HP 5. They attack with sharp claws, but they can also spin a magical silk thread to attack from a distance and paralyze the enemy. Characters who suffer at least 1 blood corruption from the silk will be unable to move until the end of the scene. They can use their action during subsequent turns to try to get free. Alright. We have the Polycephalus. Difficulty 2 to 3, HP 7. Difficulty varies depending on the creature's experience. As with black goats, her difficulty grows by 1 when they use battle magic. If a fire-based attack manages to reach the huge exposed brain, it deals 2 additional HP. Oh, so that's their brain sticking out. Oh my god. And they've got 3 heads as well. Wow. Okay, not cool. Don't like it. Progeny of Hunger, difficulty 2 to 4, HP 6 to 9. Difficulty varies depending on the size of the abomination. Characters can easily distract these creatures by using flesh decoys or taking advantage of any nearby corpse. Characters who attack the Progeny of Hunger while it is feeding gain a 2 threshold bonus. Cool. So you've got a lot of these creatures have particular weakness you can exploit, which is how you gain advantages over them narratively. We've got the Psychopomp Panther, difficulty 2, HP 6. They become far more manageable opponents if the characters disable or circumvent their beguiling breath. When they unleash their breath, all the affected characters near the creatures suffer 1 threshold penalty until the end of the scene. Wowzers. And then there are concentrated vapors. We've got satyrs, silenos, and centaurs. Difficulty 2, HP 7. So as long as they can keep singing their beguiling songs, they inflict 1 threshold penalty to all characters who can hear them. When centaurs charge into battle at a gallop, your difficulty increases to 3. Difficulty returns to 2 when the charge stops. Alright. Then we got Spectral Hounds. Difficulty 2 to 3, HP 8. Varies depending on the importance of the Broken Covenant. Okay. If the fight against the hounds happens in the last hours of the night near the break of dawn, the difficulty increases to 1. Characters can gain an edge by withstanding attacks until that moment and then turning to the offensive. Intriguing. And we have the Spirit of the Wild Hunt. Difficulty 1 to 4, HP 4 to 8. Difficulty varies depending on the spirit's nature and rank in the Cursed Procession. These creatures can only be defeated when fought separately or on the fringes of the Delirious Parade. Okay. We have the Summit Protector. Difficulty 2, but HP 12. They begin fights by pouncing from above, increasing the difficulty to 4. If a character threatens to mar their own skin, they gain 1 threshold bonus for the next action after the bluff. Interesting. Got the Troll. Difficulty 4, HP 9. They fight with heavy weapons and fear no opponent. Their weakness is sunlight. If you can shine sunlight on a troll, you can petrify it in an instant, killing it on the spot. Yes, so they're classic Scandinavian troll types. Unicorns. They look a lot grosser than you would expect unicorns to look. Difficulty 3, HP 8. They can fight with its gaze. If the unicorn wins an exchange of blows, it deals no BC, but takes control over a character's next action. The narrator can then use this possession to raise the stakes and challenge the characters. Wow, that's pretty dark. Then we've got Vampires. Excellent. Difficulty 4 to 5, HP of 8. And that's a fantastic illustration. A bit of a Nosferatu bat-like aspect to these long, grim claws coming out of the casket. The difficulty varies depending on their age. They can have many different powers and rely on most dark arts known beyond the veil when fighting against the characters. So, yeah, vampires real bad. Then we've got the Waterside Scalies. Difficulty 2 to 4, HP 5 to 10. So the difficulty varies depending on their size. If combat takes place in the water, characters get a 1 threshold penalty. The penalty doesn't apply when fighting on land. Alright. The Wayside Devil. So they never engage in physical confrontation, although they do have difficulty 4, HP 8 listed, especially not with drifters. When attacked or backed into a corner, he will immediately attempt to flee, only to plot a swift and terrible revenge. Great. Yeah, so it really pays to know something about the creatures you're facing in this game. That's the vibe I'm getting. Then we have the Wild Human, difficulty 2, HP 6. They usually avoid combat. When forced to fight, they show no special abilities other than great physical strength. Alright. Then we have Zakum. They've got difficulty 4, HP 10. They attack with their long burning branches or by throwing explosive fruit at their opponents. When a character is struck by their projectile during the exchange of blows, all nearby characters also suffer 1 blood corruption because of the explosion. Wow. Then we have the Herbarium. So here we have the different types of trees, fruits, herbs, and such that you can find beyond the veil. So I'll just look at a few random examples. So let's see. Asphodel, a perennial herbaceous plant that grows from an edible bulbous root, sports long and narrow leaves around the base and several inflorescences on top of a tall stem. The individual flowers grow and bloom in sequence, unfolding 6 white petals each. Though it has moderate medicinal properties, if boiled for a short time, its bulb will become a tonic. Drinking an infusion of asphodel seeds and wine will alleviate the effects of poisons. Stems carry a different power. If you use the spark from flint to set fire to a faggot of stems previously consecrated to a saint or pagan god, the flames will burn anything and purify substances from evil. Additionally, you can use these stems as divination tools whenever you come to a fork in the road, feel unsure of which path to take to reach your destination. Indeed, pagans and witches believe that asphodels, narcissus, calla lilies, anemones, and all other bulb flowers grow in the garden of Hecate Trivia. Very cool. So there's loads of these. I won't spoil any more. I just want to give you an example that, there's a lot of different functions for each of these. Actually, you can craft things out of them, you can use them as tools, you can make tonics of them, and they're all described here for you in this first person style. Again, it's all narrative, but there are mechanics buried in there that give you an idea of what they would do in a game context. There's quite a few of these. Aconite or Wolfsbane, some lovely diagrams as well of all these. Forget-me-nots, Devil's Clutch, Mandrake, that's a classic. The leaves and fruit can be used as a fertility enhancer for men or to alleviate the suffering of a woman during labor, but the true supernatural power hides in its root, which looks like a gnarly underground baby. When it is exposed, it immediately comes to life and begins to wail its high-pitched and blood-curdling voice. So you'll immediately die upon hearing this hellish sound. Anybody else who hears it will lose their mind unless they cover their ears with wax. So if you maintain the root's vitality, you need to bury the victim where the plant used to be. Then you keep the root baby in a vase filled halfway with water and regularly refill it to maintain the level. If left to its own devices, the mandrake root will grow into a homunculus and become a servant of the person who tended to it. Alternatively, you can squeeze the root once a year in autumn to obtain a juice that will grant the gift of invulnerability. This operation devitalizes the root and prevents it from growing. If squeezed more than once in a year, the root will die. Wow. So a lot going on with the mandrakes too. And we got some mushrooms, the Artemisia of Oblivion, all kinds of stuff. Thorn apples, golden mistletoe of oak. And then we have the lapidarium. This is stones, rocks, and other inanimate substances. So we've got glass of the Sahara, the black goat astragalus, unrivaled tools for divination, crafted using the heel bones of Baphomets, previously described as black goats. A set of 4 astragali must be fashioned from the bones of a single beast in goat form. The bones must then be washed with a solution of lye and low concentration, polished, finally etched. Only then will they become divination tools. Okay. So we've got a bunch of that kind of stuff in here. Jewels of Kings. So these gems will claim sacrifices from their owners, but they create a destiny, so anyone who owns it will become king one way or another. The person who owns it will grow in power, wealth, and stature until the time when the stone will be set in their crown. Cool. So there's some really interesting and thematic and narratively cool and complex stuff in here. I mean, just one of these items could drive a little chronicle all by itself. We've got Bezoar, something I can't pronounce, a Miasmic Ruff, all kinds of interesting stuff, Siren Hearts, Spinels. So these are different kinds of crystals. They can be mistaken for precious ones like rubies or emeralds, but they're not of that type. And the Griffin Eye. The Asteria Jet. So this is a black and shiny material. You can use jet weapons to permanently kill animated corpses and living skeletons. Even the smallest cut from a jet blade when beyond the veil will cause the entire limb to turn black, age, and wilt. It's the downside. It's a pretty big downside. And Storm Coral, Golden Soul. There's a lot of words on that. And then we have some final notes. So this is about the Codex Gigas, the role of the manuscript, and extremely powerful resource in the hands of players, and it can influence players into believing its contents. But, you know, maybe the contents are in doubt. It's always the narrator's choice, isn't it? We've got a cool mark on the back here as well. Finally, a quick look at Ex Vellum. So here you have a variety of stuff added to the game during the back kit campaign. Same warning as before. So the big part of this is that it tells you how to use the tarot. So the tarot cards that we looked at before are all listed here, and it tells you how to prepare the deck. The key thing with the tarot, and you'll see shortly, is that they have 2 different aspects for each card. They have the Book of Secrets. So we have the Lost Bestiarium, Legend of the Ephemeral Land, the Lost Grimoirium. So these are kind of spells and incantations and rites and all kinds of stuff. The Blades of Ruin and the Bindings as well. So this is the Book of Secrets, the Tarot. So when you prepare the deck, basically before each game session, everyone should be present. You put all the cards and scatter them on the table or whatever other surface. Then you shuffle them and make sure you change their position and rotate them upside down several times. And you put them all back together. So some cards will be upside down as well as being shuffled. Then you can draw a card when you would normally roll dice. You then need to consult the arcanum in this book and look at its orientation. If it's right side up or upside down, you'll turn the book the same way. So if the card is upside down, then you'll turn the book upside down in a literal fashion and read the tarot result, as you'll see. Then you can narrate the outcome. You can also use them in exchanges of blows. Upright cards, which apply success, deal only 1 HP to the target, and the player wins. Reverse cards deal 1 BC to the character, and the player loses. There are narrative prompts as well for using the tarot, and then they start introducing each one. So we'll just look at a couple here. So the Fool, if he's right side up, he's unafraid of pain, much less risk, and favors positive outcomes from your actions. Your action succeeds and you gain what you seek, but the success is only temporary. It appears as if someone stole something important from you. The player chooses what was stolen, and the narrator simply needs to leave some trace of the thief. Now if it's upside down, the Fool often heralds mistakes and reckless choices. For you, these have turned into insurmountable obstacles. Your action fails and you do not gain what you seek. Despite this, just as you try to stand back up, you spot a crucial detail, a hidden path or handhold you can grab onto in order to better your condition. The narrator will point you to this detail. So how cool is that? It really adds a new dimension of physicality to the book, which I like. We've got the Magician, the Priestess, the Empress, the Emperor. I like the Pope's image, so look at him. The Pope guides you to a moral, dialectical, and practical victory, leaving no room for debate. Your action succeeds and you gain what you seek. Unfortunately, it appears as if a hostile individual or faction has just made contact with an artifact of Beyond the Veil. The narrator must reveal the faction, but not what they gained. Oof. If it's upside down, Mr. Pope, and the Pope formalizes your defeat, and not even the wisest counsel could help you avoid this fate. Your action fails, and you do not gain what you seek. Don't despair, soon enough you'll meet an unexpected authority figure. Their counsel, revelation, or their mere presence will help you greatly. So cool. So the tarot basically is introducing a new way of having narrative consequences to your rolls. I think this is really helpful for narrators who are new to this style of game as well. So you can encourage players to use the tarot, which have inbuilt narrative consequences depending on their orientation. You still adjudicate the roll effectively by using the tarot, but it gives you that narrative outcome to drive the story forward. So the Chariot, that's another great image. Your venture is resolute, and the Chariot grants you the strength you need. Your action succeeds, and you gain what you seek. However, something else comes up. An individual object important to you moves away. They could be on the run, or the chaos could have drawn you apart. If they're flipped over, Chariot overpowers every attempt to change the situation. Your action fails, and you do not gain what you seek. But soon you will stumble upon a steed, a caravan, or a ride that could take you far away. Others may hop on with you, but it will be a journey with no return. I mean, that's a fantastic narrative hook there. You know, every tarot card grants you something like that. It's a very, very cool idea. I think it's great that this is part of the game. It definitely helps add to the physicality of the game if you're playing in person. But even if you're playing online, you know, you can physically show the card to the player, its orientation, and, you know, work out the consequences narratively. And as a narrator, you know, I would find that a great help initially starting out. We've got Death, the classic. Death always hides a need for change. On this occasion, it grants you the strength you need to change. Your action succeeds, and you gain what you seek. The success impacts your body and morale with consequences that are far from positive. You suffer 3 blood corruption. You'll need a moment to catch your breath and gather your thoughts. Ouch. If Death is upside down, Death sees these circumstances as the perfect occasion to push you to the ground and teach you a hopefully fruitful lesson. Your action fails and you do not gain what you seek. This failure impacts your body and morale with consequences that are far from negative. You earn 3 black dice, which you can add to any dice roll in the future. You can only do this once and all on the same roll. Oh, wow, big swing there between positive and negative for Death. And we got Temperance, the Devil, the Tower, the Star, which is a very creepy image again. The Moon. See what the Sun does. The Sun grants you strength of will and greatness. A faint glow shines on your actions. Your action succeeds and you gain what you seek. The road ahead appeared so clear after your great success, but soon you will encounter a closed door that will block your path. You'll need to find the key. If it's upside down, the sun sets in the moment when you needed its bright, enveloping blessing the most. Oh no, your action fails and you do not gain what you seek. Your failure felt like the first in a long list of hurdles, but the next time you encounter a closed door, you will know how to open it. For once, you'll have the key you need. Very cool. So everything is so thematic in this game. I just love that. You know, from the tarot to the way corruption permeates everything in the game, items, your actions, your gifts. And then we have some ideas about using the tarot in adventures, using them to outline the story, reading and interpreting the tarot. So, you know, you can use the tarot cards to outline the road ahead for your story, which is pretty cool. And it gives you interpretations for omens, disputes, factions, or milestones, which, as we saw in the main rule book, are the kind of core outline for a typical story arc for a given group of drifters. So all the cards will help you construct adventures in that way. So again, great narration tools. All the books filled with examples, tools, great stuff to help you get to the table and get playing. Gifts in the tarot. So the players can also choose to draw a tarot to inspire the birth of their new gift. So then we have examples of gifts that can come from the different tarot cards as well. So I mean, there's so many uses for these things. It's great to have them. Tower, the World, the Judgment, all those different gifts. Now we have the Book of Secrets. So this is created to work together with Codex Gigas for a mysterious goal. It's unclear how much he stole from that draft in order to create his own book, what he changed in the original, and so he had some motives, but we don't know what they are. So we have some Lost Bestiarium pages, a shorter work detailing important personalities from Beyond the Veil, the Lost Grimoirium focused on magic ingredients, magical items, and potions, and the 6 Blades of Ruin, which we saw in the Arcafati box. I won't focus too much on this stuff. We've got Alp and Incubi, difficulty 1, HP 4. When concealing their presence or fleeing, the difficulty of these monsters increases to 3. When they decide to turn their evil eye on the characters, they can worsen any pre-existing additions like curses, poisoning, disabilities, etc., adding increasing threshold penalties to their rolls. Oof. Got the Black Goat. Very cool. Difficulty 2 to 3, HP 6. Their difficulty varies depending on the creature's experience. When Black Goats use magic, the difficulty grows by 1. Magic items carried by a Black Goat may allow them to temporarily fly, move through obstacles, or even heal wounds. Healing items are always single use, however. Cool. We've got the Bogeyman, difficulty 3, HP 7. Oh, that's terrifying. Look at that. A Bogeyman can rely on its power over shadows to move through them or sneak up onto an unsuspecting opponent. First time a character spots a Bogeyman, they'll suffer 1 threshold penalty. If they're struck by fire or light, characters will gain a bonus to subsequent actions. Very cool. We've got giants. Oh my goodness. Difficulty and HP, both question marks. So fighting them is nearly impossible. You can see there, these are mountains and trees here. So you can see how enormous this giant is. You may manage to square up with a smaller sized giant by deploying siege weapons and a regiment of soldiers, but even then the fight will be desperate. So again, more of a plot device than something to fight. Then we got the Seirim, difficulty 2, HP 7. So they become unstoppable forces when frenzied, ravenous, and relentless beasts. Their transformation raises their difficulty to 4, but they must sacrifice 1 HP for every action they take in this frenzied form. Cool. We've got the Siren. Unleash a terrible attack with their voice. They can involve all nearby characters in exchange of blows by singing whirlpools into existence. They can cause grave BC but are vulnerable to counterattacks. Difficulty 3, HP 7. Oh, wow. Then we've got Tetramorphos, difficulty 6, HP 8. Wow, look at this guy. Battle is never the first choice for them, and when forced into action, they rely on a formidable speed for short-range movements. They can catch victims by surprise and impose disadvantages on drifters. Then we have their appearances, etc. Legend of the Ephemeral Land. So this is a collection of important, honorable, and renowned personalities in the Beyond the Veil. Prince Hagazi, Prince Heika. We don't have any stats for these guys. They're too beyond. Prince Phanos, Prince Samhain, the Blood Gatherer. Princess Ma'av, the Honey Tongue. Leif Erikson the First. Then we have Herman the Recluse. This is the name of the narrator of these books, I believe. Althus the Fate Breaker. We have Gianni the Priest. Then we have the Lost Grimmarium. So here we get into dark magic, which is Sal's invitation to Sabbaths. Phoenix feathers, which are weapons, can only be used once but never fails. I give you loads of detail and lore about each of these. Blessings of the False Miracle. Hand of Glory. Oh, these are really cool. So sacrilegious objects used when perpetrating the most baseless atrocities, and you'll easily find them for sale on the counters of goblin merchants. We have Calamities. Evil and intelligent creatures from beyond the veil who are versed in black magic use this spell to unleash an earthquake, flood, famine, or tornado against a city or village. Wow. Dance Macabre. The power to use music to pierce the boundary between two worlds. Oh, cool. Marionette Army. So you can animate entire armies of marionettes, dolls, suits of armors, or statues. Wow. Traps for the little folk. Necromancy, defiling bones and corpses, of course. It doesn't really bring the dead back to life. It uses corpses and bones as receptacles for ghost presences and other incorporeal creatures of beyond the veil who long to possess a body. The ritual of reanimation is not difficult and does not require rare ingredients, so something you can do relatively easily. Trinabog's Glove, Subjugation, mental subjugation and supernatural power typical of some creatures from beyond the veil. All it takes is a look, a whisper, or a kiss for them to take control. Vampires and succubi and alps are great masters of this art. Summoning of the Bat Thing. So you can summon this guy, difficulty 4, HP 7. Can be fought and defeated in normal combat. Fights using his bone scepter or throwing blood rats from his body at the opponent. The character who defeats the Rat King will suffer 1 permanent blood corruption. This slot always remains corrupted like the pre-darkened slot on the character sheet. Yikes. Makes it much easier to get the rest of your stuff corrupted. Cursed Weapons. We got Consecrated Chasers. We've got summoning rituals. So these are practiced by heretics, sects, and evil cults. Sky splitting. So you basically summon hail, storms, and lightning. We've got love filters or bindings. So the drinker will fall in love with the first creature they see, with limits to the appearance but not the sex of the target. Wow. Elixir of the Great Sacrifice. It's a dark alchemical feast. Okay. Necrophania. This allows you to summon an especially powerful and elusive kind of specter from beyond the veil, known as teachers, silent guides, light relatives, elder brothers, or elder sisters. It's a fascinating power, and I had to call upon it often, but it carries risks you should never underestimate. Metamorphic Collapse. Okay, so it caused the guy to melt from the inside, but then it allowed him to liquefy completely, turning into a puddle of viscous black liquid with golden reflexes. So he felt invulnerable in that state. Orgiastic Mysteries, feverish forbidden blood orgies. The initiates in these orgies quickly lose their mind, unleashing their bodies to primitive dances. You summon entities that grant superhuman strength and extreme ferociousness against anyone who stands in the way of their new wards. Okay. Lapis Sanguinarius. Oh, so this is a new mineral. We have the Lord's Scepter, an artifact. Moonrod, another artifact. Mysterious Inscriptions. Alchemical Pendants. The Sword of Gloom Forest. The Human Mask. So they're used by the little folk to disguise themselves from the unaware. They need to be removed during nights of the full moon. Bright lunar light would burn them and render them useless. Okay, so that's how changelings work in this world. Got the secret fruit. Skeleton key. So it unlocked for me underground ways forbidden to mortals, open chests full of treasure, and spell scrolls. And proved to me that there's always a way out if you look hard enough. Alright. We have the bandage of the all-seeing eye. We've got the wand of the venomous tear. Okay. And then we have the blades of ruin that we looked at before. So yeah, it's got copies of the cards that we have in the Arcafati box. And then we have the fate bindings that we saw as well, but expressed here in a textual format rather than those full color booklets. I actually think they kind of look better in black and white. The artwork looks pretty amazing. I think they were originally intended perhaps to be black and white, but yeah, they all look really good. Wow. And the Endless Nights. So there you go. That is the Deathless Edition. Just for my own personal enjoyment, I'll put the lovely magnetic screen back on there, and you can see how it stays beautifully. So yeah, that's Memento Mori. And the character sheets there. So this, I think, will definitely appeal to those of you who are on the horror gaming spectrum, like myself. It is very, very dark. I mean, there's not that intersection between horror and humor that you see in some other games, even in Call of Cthulhu with Pulp Cthulhu or things like that. This is a game about characters falling to bits, being corrupted by disease, by supernatural forces beyond our comprehension, and they're just trying to go on one last quest, trying to do one last thing, fulfill one final dream before they succumb to the darkness. And you will succumb. It will happen. The question is, will you manage to do something good, to make a difference along the way before you become an irrecoverable monstrosity stuck beyond the veil forever? So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was insightful. When I do get a chance to play the game, I'll come back and maybe talk some more about it. I'd be happy to go into more detail if anybody would be interested, but I highly recommend taking a look at this if you had a chance. I think it's an amazing production, definitely worth the money, and the shipping cost was very reasonable for me in the UK, coming from Italy. The customer service was exemplary. Again, I keep saying that, but I think it's very important to note that. And once again, Two Little Mice have done it, as far as I'm concerned. It's a wonderful game, great to have in the collection, and I'm very much looking forward to Household Part 2. While the Kickstarter is running, I will in turn be looking at Household Volume 1. Of course, the Director's Cut version, not the 5e version, because, as I mentioned before, I'm not the world's greatest 5e fan. But yeah, I love the dice system in this game, love the corruption mechanic, love the narrative potential. There's just a ton of material here to work with as a GM and as a player. It really feels like a complete, fully drawn game world with loads of stuff that is left open still for you to work with as a narrator and as a group of players. So yeah, let me know what you think about it in the comments. If you played it yourself, I'd love to hear about your experiences. If you have any hot tips on how to narrate, because I will be the narrator, that's the way it always goes. So tips are always appreciated. If you enjoyed what you saw, please click like and subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. I'm nearly there. Just need a little bit more of a push. So I'd appreciate your help in that respect. If you want to help me stay financially afloat despite all my expenditures on RPGs, which are filling up my house as we speak, please do click the Ko-fi link down below to donate whatever you can. I always appreciate that. In the meantime, I hope you stay well. Avoid the plague like the plague. Go check out Memento Mori. I think you'll enjoy it if you're of the horror persuasion for sure. I'm really, really thrilled with what I've seen in this preview, which is for myself as much for you. Please do let me know what you think. Avoid the horrors of Beyond the Veil, and I hope to see you in the comments below and in our next video as well. So take care and see you soon. Bye-bye.